I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on NIST Cybersecurity Framework Workforce Development Solutions. I'm going to hand things over now to our Cybersecurity Product Manager here at New Horizons, Mr. Buck Chell.
Thank you, Kelly. Hello, everyone. I'm Buck Chell, the Product Manager for Cybersecurity at the New Horizons Corporate Office. I'd also like to welcome you to today's webinar and also frame it for you, which is going to be the 8th out of 10 cybersecurity focus webinars that New Horizons is hosting in the month of October. And if you're not aware, October has been designated by the U.S. federal government as National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which is an annual campaign to raise awareness about the importance of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity Awareness Month has started to gain observance worldwide. It's now in its 15th year. The goal of New Horizons Cybersecurity Awareness Month webinars, which now is our 3rd year as an annual campaign, is to provide you with input from subject matter experts on different cybersecurity topics to help enhance your organization's cyber resilience and overall cybersecurity posture. The 10 cybersecurity webinars that New Horizons is hosting this month cover multiple aspects about today's ever-evolving cyber threat landscape. If you've missed any of the 7 previous webinars, you can find those and recordings along with different assets if you go to newhorizons.com, find a local center, and you can see under the promotions page the Cybersecurity Month landing page, which has all the webinars, the recording links, and different assets that you can download for free. Over the last few years, organizations have begun to adopt cybersecurity frameworks, with the NIST Cybersecurity Framework having become one of the most popular. One of the most difficult parts of integrating any cybersecurity framework is the process of figuring out how to apply it with organizations, which brings us to today's session, NIST Cybersecurity Framework Workforce Development Solutions. Today's presenter is Rick Lemieux, who's the co-founder of ITSM Solutions. Rick is responsible for overseeing sales, marketing, and business development programs. He's been involved in developing and marketing IT cybersecurity workforce solutions, development solutions for the past 15 years. Rick has been a driving force behind many companies, including NIST CSF.com, ITSMmentor.com, CareerAcademy.com, eLearnAfrica.com, Agile Sales and Marketing. He is a certified IT professional and was recently identified as one of the top 5 IT entrepreneurs in the state of Rhode Island by the Tech 10 Awards for his work in developing innovative online workforce development solutions for IT, cybersecurity, and business professionals. Rick Lemieux is on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and we are delighted to have him today. Rick, welcome. You now have the floor.
Thanks, Buck, and thanks to everyone on the call today for being part of this presentation on the NIST Cybersecurity Framework Workforce Development Solutions. We first walk through the agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about the business cybersecurity challenge, and it's a real big challenge. As many of you might be aware, I think it was published this past week or so that there are basically 3 million jobs open globally for cybersecurity professionals. So, needless to say, there's a lot of work to be done on the workforce development front to fill those openings that are out there today. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the NIST Cybersecurity Framework itself, how it came about, where it's at right now, and where it's going. I'm going to follow that up with a discussion about the NIST Cybersecurity Workforce Framework, which is also part of the NIST Cybersecurity Initiative in terms of defining the roles that exist within a cybersecurity organization. The government has spent a lot of money putting this together in partnership with NIST so that it could provide organizations, with some guidance on, how to basically hire the right people to fill those roles that are within a cybersecurity program. I'm going to do a quick introduction to NISTCSF.com, which is a program that we put together in partnership with academia and the government to create a standardized, set of curricula, labs and cyber range training programs to help individuals, get through the process of getting trained and certified, basically to acquire the credentials to be hired into organizations looking to, fill their cybersecurity organization. And then I'm going to touch briefly on a few of the training programs that are available today that are offered through New Horizons as part of their overall training portfolio. Let me first talk a little bit about, the challenge. And this is, something that's been talked about for a long time now, and we're starting to make some progress in developing or launching solutions that will help close this massive skills gap that exists within the cybersecurity landscape today. What's interesting is those who are causing us the problem, if you will, the bad guys, they are very well trained and very well organized, so they kind of got a head start on beating us to the point where they can break into our infrastructures and steal our information, as we read about every day in the paper or on the internet. Every day there's another new breach. I think the most recent one was the Facebook breach, which is becoming a really big problem for Facebook and for those who are members of Facebook. So once again, we're really behind the eight ball here, and the government has done a really good job of making significant investments, in developing a referenceable framework, the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, along with developing pathways to the roles that need to be filled in order to fill out the workforce that will protect us against those bad guys and the breaches that are happening every single day. And as I mentioned earlier, the latest numbers are about 3 million open positions worldwide. Now, when they say 3 million, that's really a combination of two different things. It's a combination of being able to, retool your existing workforce. And when I say workforce, I'm not just talking about, the IT organization or the cybersecurity organization. I'm talking about the entire workforce, because everyone is involved in organizational cybersecurity. It all starts, with the average employee who is utilizing the tool sets, the digital tool sets that are provided by the corporation to do their job. They're being attacked every day. They're being attacked through email. They're being attacked through the software on their systems. They're being attacked through the apps that they download on their phones, on their computers. It's really, it's really a crazy situation out there. So we need to basically make sure that we train every employee on cybersecurity based on the role and responsibility they play within an organization. So if I'm, Rick in the accounting department, I need to learn more about phishing emails. I need to learn more about how to utilize social media, removal devices, things that are part of my day-to-day business routine that I don't even think about. I just do. I click and off to get my job done. But the problem is a lot of these emails that are coming in, contain malware. So as soon as you click on it or click on the link, the malware gets loaded into your computer and then spreads its way through the network, where they gain access to the information that they're looking to steal. What's interesting is that when they come into your infrastructure, they sit there for a long time, and they're basically in reconnaissance mode, looking for what's out there and what might be of value to them, and then working on ways to get that, basically transported over to where they are. So we really need to spend the time to train, all employees on good cyber behavior, and basically make them, aware of the things that could be devastating to the overall company. That extends itself into the IT organization, where you've got network engineers and application engineers and software engineers or software developers. They all need to be trained, in terms of the things that they're responsible for, and really approach these things from a security point of view, especially the software and application developers, because they're obviously creating applications that create new services for an organization. But let's face it, if they don't do that in a secure way, they just created another, vulnerability point for the organization to be attacked. And so we really need to spend the time there as well. I guess last but not least, and probably first, is the executive team and board members of an organization. They need to understand, what their roles and responsibilities are in terms of cybersecurity investments and basically capabilities. They need to view this as an organizational capability. They need to make those investments, and they need to continually be improving, that capability on an ongoing basis, because as we all know, the threat landscape is changing every microsecond as another Internet of Things device gets connected to the infrastructure, as more software is downloaded, as more users, gain access or have access to your systems. So we really need to make sure that, that the executive teams need to make sure that the proper investments are being made, in order to protect the organization. Let me spend a second talking about the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. This is something near and dear to me. I've been involved in this from the initial launch. I spent about a year in the field meeting with academic, government, and private institution partners to really understand, the situation. I mean, obviously, cybersecurity as itself has been kind of a dysfunctional thing. I mean, we've all known about it for a long time. We all thought about it in terms of, firewalls and intrusion detection systems and, certified ethical hackers. But we really never thought about it as an organizational thing. And we really had no way to do that because there was no referenceable framework outside of some proprietary solutions that were being promoted by different vendors. So we really never took it seriously. But as the problem continued to get worse and the internet continued to grow and more devices were being connected and more attacks were being successful, it became something, of kind of a national issue. And that's when the government stepped in and said, listen, we need to put together a referenceable framework. They originally were trying to do it, just directly from private industry. That wasn't working. They tried to do it through the legislative agenda. That wasn't working. And then they finally decided to reach out to the National Institutes of Technology and Standards, NIST, to get them to drive that, that agenda. And the whole concept behind the framework was that of built around a collaborative model, both of government, private industry, and academia. And it was also built around being a voluntary framework so that, we built it. You now have a referenceable framework and you are free to choose to adopt it or not adopt it. That's pretty much how things started. And that was it was published in February of 2014 and then updated, in 2018. Clearly, it's something that, not only fits organizations here in the U.S., but organizations worldwide. In fact, the framework itself has now been adopted. I think it's up to 29 countries. It's extremely popular in the Middle East and in Asia and in Europe. It's really starting to take off. Those countries have, not only adopted it as it is, but have also contributed to other things that they wanted to see in the framework. So it's really, overall, it's a global collaborative initiative. One of the key events that happened, when President Trump took office was he issued an executive order to make the NIST Cybersecurity Framework mandatory for all federal agencies. And so what that basically meant is that, the organizations had to adopt the framework and had to prove, to the government that they have done that. The first step in that process was for all of these organizations to do an assessment. And as you know, things move kind of slowly in the government. So that took about a year to put together. It came out a few months ago. It was issued, all the reports were issued to the Office of Management and Budget. They in turn consolidated it all into one report back to the president. And basically what it showed is that 75% of all federal agencies are way below where they need to be. I don't know about you, but that scares the living daylights out of me because without the government and the capabilities that the government provides, we could have chaos on our hands very quickly. So now they're working with the OMB, they're working with Congress, they're trying to figure out, how do we close all these gaps? So Congress is, passing a series of bills, allocating monies, and so on and so forth to at least, allow these organizations, these agencies to put in place, the controls associated with the framework to improve their cybersecurity and make that as part of a continual, cybersecurity improvement program. The framework itself is a risk-based approach to cybersecurity. So it's focused in on, managing cybersecurity risk within an organization. And there are three key components associated with the framework. There's the framework core, which basically describes, the desired outcomes, and it's expressed as functions. Okay, so things that you need to have in place as functions in order to achieve the outcomes that the framework, describes. There are implementation tiers, and it basically describes how, cybersecurity is practiced, and it's informed by business needs. Okay, so that, if your business is a financial services company and you have these specific needs, you put in place the controls that are associated with, the financial service marketplace. Same thing for healthcare, energy, government, and so on and so forth. And then the third element is the profiles. And that's where it aligns, the core with resources and tolerances set up, through policies that organizations want to adhere to. And then basically it's also used to define your current state and your future state. So every cybersecurity framework implementation starts with an assessment, and that assessment is where you go through and identify, where you're at, where your gaps are at, what your score is at, and then, you set yourself a target score, you build a risk treatment plan to get to that target score, you make the necessary changes, you implement the necessary controls, and then you reassess yourself, and you'll see, how much you've improved and how close you are to your goal as an organization in terms of the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. Spend a second talking about the NIST/NICE. NICE stands for the National Institute of Cybersecurity Education, Cybersecurity Workforce Framework. This framework, the Workforce Framework, was originally released in November of 2016. The update was just released, I believe it was about a week or two ago, and basically has been, dramatically updated. It was originally put together in partnership with the Department of Defense, since they were pretty well organized on cybersecurity roles and responsibilities, for their organization. It's been, substantially modified and updated to be more reflective of, the needs of commercial enterprises. It was designed to serve, several key groups, including employers, candidates, educators, trainers, and technology providers. So it's really a set of guidance. It doesn't tell you what, it just tells you, it doesn't tell you how, it just tells you the what. Okay, so you need to figure out how this fits into your organization. It's extremely flexible, so that folks like myself can go out and develop curricula that will allow us to train people to to deliver on those roles. It will also provide organizations a way to kind of build out their their people structure in terms of their particular programs. It also provides technology providers with some really good guidance on how to develop their technological solutions. And the training programs that go along with them. It's focused in on, really enabling individuals or organizations to acquire the knowledge, skills, abilities, and credentials to perform, a cybersecurity role and a specialty role. So, for instance, if you look at the Workforce Framework, it not only describes the roles, it identifies the knowledge, skills, and abilities associated with those roles. It identifies the credentials both at the academic level and the certificate level. And then it also provides a pathway to locate jobs. They've actually developed a CyberSeek tool, which is really good in partnership with CompTIA. And it allows you to understand, where the opportunities are, what are the particular opportunities that are available by role, how much do they pay, so on and so forth. And so that really helps out, a candidate to, plan not only their career pathway from a training point of view, but also plan out their career pathway from an employment point of view. Really, really good system, well worth the investment they made. The workforce is actually defined into 7 different categories, or workforce categories, including that of those who are responsible for provisioning digital services, to those who are responsible for operating and maintaining it, overseeing and governing it, protecting and defending it, analyzing it, collecting and operating and investigating. So this really covers both what I call the general roles and the specific roles, or the specialty roles. And what I mean by that is, let's face it, cybersecurity organizations are just like traditional IT organizations. You need people who can engineer them. You need people who can, manage and operate them. And you need people who basically are responsible for, working with the business. And in this case, managing the business risk. So they're communicating with the lines of business to say, okay, you want to offer this new service. It introduces this level of new risk to the organization. Is the return on investment worth the risk? Okay, so that's all part of the process. Those are the general roles associated with a NIST cybersecurity, workforce organization. And then you take that to the next level. So you get into the specialty roles. So those are the people who are responsible for, let's say, doing an audit, basically doing pen testing, testing the integrity of the cybersecurity program, doing certified ethical hacking, to see how easy it is to break into your system, as well as to, collect the information to, to complete or, begin the process of an investigation after a breach. You really want to know, why did it happen? Where did it happen? How do we prevent it from happening again? The other thing that organizations need to think about from a workforce point of view is resiliency, because it's absolutely mandatory that as part of your program, you have a way to deal with a successful breach in terms of business continuity and recovery. I mean, the worst thing that could happen is this breach takes you down and you're out of business for 3, 4, 5 days. And for some organizations, that will put them out of business, let alone the fines that they're going to suffer on the back end of this whole thing. So it's really, really important for organizations to basically put in place these capabilities to make sure that, they're properly protected and also resilient in terms of recovery. Now, you may be sitting there going, well, that's all well and good for the big companies who have lots of money to make this happen. How does a small to medium-sized business deal with this? And once again, they have the opportunity to do it themselves. There are the trainings and the tool sets and the monies out there to help SMBs. Congress just passed a new law focused specifically on SMBs and providing funding to help them become more secure, or they can actually work with a managed, service, security provider, an MSSP, someone who can provide those services to organizations who are not capable or don't have the staff to do it themselves. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about NISTCSF.com. NISTCSF.com is about a year old now. It was originally conceived through a partnership with my company and the University of Massachusetts. Its focus is that it's basically a consortium that's been created by ITSM Solutions, my company, and academia and other industry partners to create a standardized set of accredited curricula for this cybersecurity framework workforce development. All right. As I mentioned earlier, the cybersecurity market has been kind of dysfunctional, disorganized. There's a lot of certifications out there. They're all great certifications like CISSP and Security Plus, and they're still absolutely relevant. And in fact, they're even defined in the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. I mean, the NIST Cybersecurity Workforce Framework. But we are kind of heading in a new direction right now where we need some additional trainings and certifications and labs and trainings that will allow us to learn the knowledge and skills and how to operationalize the framework. So while all these other things are important for general security concepts or some of the specialty roles that I mentioned earlier, we're really focused in on building the baseline workforce across an organization. And, and that's the focus of NISTCSF.com. They're working towards creating the curriculum and the tool sets to support that. The genesis of this program was based on a professionalizing cybersecurity report created at Salve Regina University here in my home state of Rhode Island by Francesca Spinelli and Lieutenant Colonel Sean Kern of the National Defense University. They spent a lot of time researching, the cybersecurity market from a professional development point of view, and they really discovered the thing I said earlier, and that is that it was dysfunctional and disorganized. And they really started to do some comparisons in the cybersecurity space to that of the professional spaces of accounting and lawyers and other people who are responsible for very important things in our day-to-day lives, and the process that they have to go through to become certified and accredited and licensed to practice within their professions. They couldn't understand why that didn't exist within cybersecurity. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that no one really thought cybersecurity was something that important until we started to experience what we're experiencing now. So they did a fair amount of research in pulling together the data to basically put forth a solution on how to get that done. The goal of the NISTCSF.com is to really not only to build this curriculum, but to provide it to high schools, community colleges, universities, and private training companies like New Horizons, to basically enable them to, develop this workforce. So whatever pathway you choose to get into cybersecurity or upgrade your skill sets to be a cybersecurity professional, you have multiple pathways to get there. The main thing is that everyone's learning the same thing, so that when you come together as a group, you've all been trained on the basic principles, in the same way. And so that allows you to operate as a team, and that allows you to deliver a successful outcome, or to basically help an organization, operationalize things like the NIST Cybersecurity Framework across their enterprise. The program itself, the NCSF program, is built around 3 training tracks. As I mentioned earlier, there's an engineering track, there's a technical analyst track, or business operations, and then there's a analyst track, which we're really tied to business governance, and I'll cover that in a second. But let me first start on the engineering track. From a delivery point of view, we designed the program to be delivered in multiple venues. I mean, there are those of us who love classroom and online classroom training delivered by a certified instructor. There are some of us who like self-study or blended, a combination of both the self-study, and the instructor-led time. And so it's really designed to create, maximum flexibility, because our lives are so crazy. We have very little time to go back to school or get ourselves updated, and this gives you the capability to do it, in multiple formats. From a curriculum point of view, the engineering track is really designed to, first of all, enable the individual with the practitioner level skills. So that's the skills required to engineer a program. So you know enough about the framework, enough about the control systems associated with the framework, and enough about engineering principles to bring all that together. That's combined with, with online labs where you can then apply as an individual the theoretical skills that you've learned in a simulated environment. That's followed up by working in with a cyber range. A cyber range is basically I guess is a piece of software, the best way to describe it, that simulates an entire infrastructure. So it allows you to go in, and it's loaded up with malware and other cybersecurity type problems that you need to identify, so that as you go through that process in the simulated environment as part of an overall team, you'll be able to translate that into what you do on your day-to-day job. That's followed up with certification trainings. So obviously it's becoming, the credentials are becoming important to organizations, and as part of the hiring process. And then we've also included in our program the ability to teach individuals how to do an assessment, or how to be part of an assessment team. Because that's, the assessment is where it all begins, as I think I mentioned earlier. And it's really important for everyone in the organization to understand what exactly does the assessment do, and what exactly is my role in the assessment. Because they're collecting a lot of information from a lot of different people and answering a lot of questions, which will help determine how secure they really are, what their cybersecurity score is in regards to the framework. So everyone needs to have some baseline knowledge in that. There are the folks who run it, so they need to have more advanced knowledge. But there are those of us who just participate and need to know how to participate. And that's part of the program that we offer. And as you can see, we've kind of lined that up with the workforce categories that were on the previous slide as part of the NIST Cybersecurity Workforce Framework. So the folks in engineering really focus in on the security provisioning and analyzing portion of the workforce framework. On the technical analyst front, once again, very similar pathway, but taught along the lines of operations and improvement. Okay, so as it says here, they align with the workforce categories of operate, maintain, protect and defend, collect and operate. And then there's the business analyst track. And as you notice, each one of these individuals will go down a specific pathway, but there'll be some particulars associated with each one of these specific to each of these roles. So for instance, you'll notice in the business analyst track that we have a governance certification. So that's where they would go through like COBIT training and other types of trainings that are available for governance best practices. And the workforce categories are pretty well defined and oversee, govern, and investigate. Okay, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about a couple of the certification programs that are available today and through the New Horizons Network. The first is the NIST Cybersecurity Framework / CFM. CFM stands for Controls Factory Model. And let me just take a second to explain that. In putting these programs together, we were fortunate enough to work with the University of Massachusetts and their Chief Information Security Officer, Larry Wilson. Some of you may know Larry. Some of you may have attended a conference where Larry has spoken. He does the Secure World conferences all over the country, along with several other events. He's a fantastic speaker. He knows this topic cold. He's the one who built the program for the university. The university has adopted that program across its 5 campuses. And they did that so well that word got out and other universities came to Larry to help them do the same thing. So UMass has gone out and helped probably 25, 30 other universities in the Massachusetts area to help them do the same thing. It has now expanded to governments and private companies and so on. So it's really starting to take off. And one of the key components associated with Larry's program is this controls factory model. And the model or methodology is really an easy way to operationalize the control systems that are identified in the framework. So for instance, one of the control systems is the Center for Internet Security 20 Critical Controls, or 20 Critical Security Controls. Larry's developed an approach on how to do that and do it seamlessly and easily. It doesn't require a rocket scientist. It's really, really simple. The other thing is that the controls factory model can do the same thing for programs like ISO 27001 or COBIT or NIST 853 or NIST 80171. Some of these terms might be familiar, some of them are not, some of them might not be. But the point is that the controls factory model is designed to allow an organization to adopt and adapt or operationalize the things that are necessary for their business to improve their cybersecurity score and their cybersecurity capabilities. So this foundation program is a one-day classroom or a 4-hour video program that teaches the fundamentals of the NIST Cybersecurity Framework and the UMass Controls Factory model. All right, so it's really geared towards those who, need to have a basic understanding to perform their jobs, as executives, accountants, lawyers, information technology professionals, anyone who has kind of a passive role but really needs to know about it in order to do their job, and maybe even participate with those who have an active role in developing the program, doing the assessments, and so on and so forth, okay? The program itself, as I mentioned, is 1 day, 8 hours or 4 hours videos, and it comes with the necessary credentials, including a certification, professional certification, college credits, PDUs and CEUs for ongoing professional development. The Practitioner course is where we do a deep dive in helping those who are responsible for the engineering, operations, and business risk to acquire those how-to skills on how to engineer, implement, test, and maintain in this cybersecurity program. The program itself is once again focused on those who have active roles as engineers, testers, operators, and continuous improvement professionals. It's 4 days in length in the classroom or virtual classroom, or it can be delivered as a self-paced video program. I think there's about 12 hours of video combined with some other study requirements and so on and so forth. And just like the foundations, it comes with a professional certification, and it delivers college credits and professional development credits around PDUs and CEUs. The third is a series of video training programs that we've brought together to help individuals, acquire what we call the baseline certifications that are identified, in the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. In other words, I talk about these credentials, or the workforce framework, the credentials that you need to have. So not only do you need to have, cybersecurity certifications and trainings, but you also need to have, network trainings and, software development trainings and other things that are required as part of the credentials that are identified in the workforce framework. So this video training portfolio provides you a way to get that training, to prepare for those examinations, to fill out your portfolio in order to meet the requirements that are outlined, in the workforce framework. Okay, let me just go back. I just kind of jumped ahead here and I explained the next slide first, but this one here is the Bootcamp, and the Bootcamp is just a combination of the foundation and the practitioner program delivered as one program. The key difference here is the programs are identical to what's delivered individually. The key difference here is the exam, where if you take the foundation and then follow that with the practitioner, there are 2 separate exams that get delivered. If you take it as a boot camp where you combine the 2 of them in a classroom, it's over a 5-day period. There's 1 exam that you take to achieve, the practitioner certification. It'll combine both the foundation and practitioner exams as 1 exam. That's the key difference. And I think that's about it for me, and definitely at this point would like to open the floor to questions. So Kelly, I'll hand it back to you at this point.
All right. Thank you so much, Rick. And thanks everyone for joining us today. If you guys have any questions for Rick, we'll go ahead and stay on the line for the next few minutes and address those over audio. In the meantime, I wanted to remind everyone that today's session is being recorded. You will all receive a recording link later today, as well as the slide deck to review anything you may have missed. I encourage you all to reach out to your local New Horizons for further information. And if you are not familiar with your local New Horizons, you can log on to our website at newhorizons.com and do a zip code search to find the center nearest you. On our website, you will also find all of our past webinar recordings in our archive library. We have over 100 past webinar recordings that you can view at any time and learn, different tips and tricks and things like that. So those are all free for you. So I hope you do take advantage of that as well. And Rick, it looks like we don't have any questions, so I think we can go ahead and wrap up today's session. So thank you again so much for joining us and speaking on behalf of New Horizons. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And thanks again, everyone, for joining us. I hope you'll join us for future webinars. Thanks so much and have a great day.